first question to do kind of relatively briefly, but how did you get into the seat that you're in now?
I guess Roger, that goes back quite a long way, really. So I got involved with the mobility industry, which is a general term for our industry, which covers anything from a mobility scooter to a fully fledged power chair for somebody who just can't walk at all, stair lifts, and clearly now home lifts, which is where I am now at Stiltz. So been involved in the industry since 1993. Started a company called Sunrise Medical just down the road from where I'm sitting, just outside Dudley today,
Right.
and evolved from that. Bought a stairlift business from them, and doing a management buyout, which was, gosh, when was that? That was year 2000, I think, 2001 maybe. And we ran that for 10 years, sold that, and then went on a mad investing spree. Invested in about 10 or 12 businesses, not all of which turned out terribly well. Some of them did, and Stiltz was one of the ones that did, and that's how I happen to be here today. So that's
Excellent.
a sort of very, very story in a nutshell.
No, and a good success. So I'm going to immediately pick up on that because I know it's something that a lot of people I get involved in terms of considering acquisitions, bringing businesses in, and those kind of things. Everybody recognizes the kind of the excitement and the challenge, but also potentially the risk. So what's your big learning out of acquiring businesses into another business and putting it together? Is there anything that comes to mind, Mike?
Yeah, I guess there's several things. So I think I've always been more successful in doing that with businesses where I've had the time to get intimately involved with. So when I originally did this back in year 2000, 2001, when we were invested in Minibase, that was a management buyout. It was with my boss at the time. So he was the MD and I was a sales director. And it was had some money left over from a divorce I'd just been through, and that all went into the business.
Right.
And then we just threw ourselves right into it. So I think that whole commitment to doing it is definitely the path forward. When I went through a mad investment spree, having sold the Minivator business at the end of beginning of 2010, I think my learning from that was I'm a better chief exec than I am a chairman, and I have the title of both today. But that's because I think mainly because we invested a lot of businesses at that time just didn't have the time to fix the problems that inevitably come up when you're dealing with
Right.
what are either turnaround startups or build stories. So that is, don't leave yourself too thinly spread on the ground, because if you do that, then you're going to come unstuck. So never done an acquisition of one business from another business, although just done a couple on a business I'm chairman of recently, and that's starting to work. But that's the chief exec who's doing that rather than me. So it's making sure you've got the bandwidth to deal with it.
No, okay, I get that. Yeah, because there's always more behind it than you actually can't imagine, I guess. So that's the point. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's interesting. And just following on that theme, and again, because I know a lot of people are interested in this in terms of when you make those acquisitions and look into them, how important are the kind of people piece? And again, what's your thoughts and ideas in terms of how you address the kind of people aspects when you're making those kind of acquisitions and mergers?
Yeah, so I describe what I do as investing rather than acquiring, actually, and I think that probably plays straight into the question you're asking me. So for me, in businesses, there's three pillars you need to build a business. Number one is a product. Number two is the processes, which glue the product to the third pillar, which is the people.
Yep.
So you definitely need a product which the market likes, right? So there's no point starting if you don't have that. The next thing you need is people who understand their market and who want to help drive that business. So you've got to have people who've got the passion, they've got the drive, they've got the determination when things get a bit tough, that they don't just give up and walk away. So the product and the people are two important ones. The processes, so long as you know what you're doing with processes, you can stick those around the other two. So and
Sure.
Stiltz is a great example of that. So when I got involved with Stiltz, there was four founders, and they had a great product. and they were very ambitious and very keen to make it work. And all we had to do then was help run a business around them and allow it to grow as far as they were capable as individuals of taking it. And then over time, some of them have left, and
Sure.
one of the four founders still remains as he's been able to grow with the business.
Right. No, okay. No, I like that in terms of, and you're right. I mean, product is product. And I guess things like the markets that you're in, you know, that's probably a growing market, I guess, given the demography and so on and so forth. And people's an obvious, but I like also I asked about people, but you put process in there too. And I think that's actually, again, a lot of people struggle with that. They don't have the consistency and discipline of process that then ensures that they do what they do. And so I like those three. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So
It just delivers a customer. The customer experience is delivered by the process as well as the people and the product. But you have to get the process right in making the product as well as or delivering a service as well as then the customer experience around that by processes.
Sure. No, I get that. I get that. No, excellent advice. And just one thing, and again, because I'm going to go on the same theme, because I know when you make acquisitions and you're building companies, and obviously the change that you've been through, you go through ups and downs. I mean, there's some really great days out there, and there's some really kind of more difficult days. So I'm just going to ask about resilience, Mike. I suspect the conversation we've had already, you're a fairly resilient kind of guy one way or another. But again, do you have thoughts about how do you keep resilient through kind of difficult periods of time?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's something that can be taught. I think it comes from having had challenges, having managed to work through those, and realizing that there's usually a solution if you look hard enough. And there's not always. You know, I've had businesses that have gone into administration as well as succeeded. So sometimes you have to know when to give up, but you have to have tried hard enough and kicked every barrier down that you possibly can along the way. And sometimes a business just ain't ever going to work. But you know that resilience piece. I think if you look at the one consistent thing across people who've been successful is that resilience piece. Because as you say, you have some great days, but you have some really horrible days when you have to deal with people issues you don't really want to. Nobody wants to go into the conflict of a meeting where things aren't working with an employee and have to deal with that. And so some bad days like that, some bad days when you're dealing with banks as well. They're not always straightforward and easy to deal with. So you have to be resilient in that and not lose your place with people like that, because it doesn't help. It doesn't get you any further forwards.
Right. No, and great advice. I love that in that kind of that regard. And then the idea, I mean, you started by saying not necessarily you can't teach resilience. I think you're probably right. It comes with experience, doesn't it? You go through those kind of situations you've talked about.
I think also some people are just born with it. Some people just take knocks, you know, as part of how they go through life, or because of their background, upbringing, or something in that has taught them to take those knocks. So it might be something you develop in childhood, it might be something you develop in adulthood. Who knows? But you definitely need it in order to be able to run a business. It's very rare you get a business that is just plain sailing all the way through.
No, absolutely. I get that. And you're right. We talk about this a lot in terms of going back to childhood, and there are things there that actually shape us who we are, and that hopefully helps to, you know, things like resilience. So I get that. So
the danger of playing amateur psychologist there, Roger. So
I know that's the danger.
As far as my psychology qualifications take me, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, you are qualified.
I don't have any, by the way. So yeah.
One kind of follow-on question to that. I just wondered if there was anything you learned from the whole COVID experience. I mean, again, that was a really difficult period of time, wasn't it? But anything that comes to mind in terms of what you kind of learned from that in terms of...
I think with it all is sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and not go into panic mode just because everybody else around you is going into panic mode. And you know, if I think back to the businesses involved with during COVID, I think what we were really good at is just saying, okay, we can only affect what we can affect. Deep breath. How do we work ourselves through it, and just come up with a plan and just think through something logically rather than going off the deep end and panicking. So it's just try and stay calm, just try and think through the issues and think about how you can manage them and what you can do to make a difference.
Sure. And I like, I mean, you said, you know, you create a plan, you stop and hold it because everything's changed. The variables have all changed. So what's the new plan? And it's interesting that actually, in some instances, I don't know if it's happened in yours, but actually It's amazing how people kind of stepped up, knowing that they had to pivot to something quite different because the world had changed. And actually, people found that quite stimulating and rallied around, and it became energizing almost in a way. Did that happen within your businesses?
Yeah, I think it probably does because you might be, we were already growing very quickly coming into COVID, and
Right.
so you don't tend to pay attention to the things that are problems as much as you do when things aren't going quite so well. So all of a sudden, when you walk in one morning and your order intake's halved, and
Sure.
your production in China's shut down because you can't get into the factory, and you just have to go, right, what are we going to do about this then? And
Sure.
so you just try to develop a plan, do what you can, change what you can, and it's a little bit every day. A little bit
No,
every day. Just try and move it forwards. And guess what? That plan's going to change as well
sure,
because
sure.
somebody then introduces some new rules associated with it, and then
Absolutely.
surprisingly then remove all the rules, and it's like, oh my goodness, how do we catch up now?
Sure, sure. No, I get. And I noticed actually, I think it was 2020 that you won the Queen's Award for international trade.
Yeah, yeah. One of our proud events. We've won quite a lot of awards over a period of time.
Right.
That's probably the one that's a feather in our cap. Yeah, and that was just because we'd grown export so much. I mean, we now probably are two-thirds of our business is international rather than UK.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's a big number for us now, and it was on that track at the time.
Yeah, sure. So I guess that came shortly after Brexit then in that case. So Brexit and then COVID and so on and so forth. I guess that if you've got amount of international business, that was a challenge as well, I guess.
So Brexit. I think if you went and talked to my staff who had to deal with the detail of customs and getting stuff around the world,
Yeah.
they would probably have a different perspective. But Brexit really didn't slow us down at all. And what you
Excellent.
had to do is just play by the new rules of getting something from the UK to Europe. Yeah, it was a bit more difficult. There was a few more customs forms. There was VAT officers in different countries demanding that your dealers now pay the VAT rather than you paying the VAT for them and claiming the VAT back. So
Sure.
all of that stuff got a little bit more complicated, and convoluted, and added a bit of extra administration. But once you'd learned how to do it,
Sure.
you could do it, right?
You
And
got
it
on and
just,
did it.
3, 6 months later, and just have a new process, a new procedure for
Sure.
doing it, right? And you just
No,
maybe a
excellent.
little bit more work than it used to be, but you
Sure.
can do it.
I guess that comes back to that process piece. If you understand what the new
Sure.
process is and then you apply it, then you make it
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
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 Well, if you understand the old process, you've got a better chance of working out what the new process is, right? So,
No, exactly. No, okay, okay. So here's a tough one then in terms of just what do you see the challenges kind of for the future in terms of kind of going forward, either in general or in your markets, or what do you think about when you think about the future?
so I guess as we're now coming to a calmer, more settled business world, certainly. I think inflation back under control, interest rates seeming like they've reached a peak. Still, very sadly, wars going on around the place, but a sort of new norm in terms of the impacts that they've had.
So,
Then you turn yourself back to your standard business stuff, don't you? Where's my next customer coming from? Where's my next set of orders coming from? Where's the future for the product range? Where's the design going? What do I need to do extra for my customers that I don't do now?
so,
Is our customer service good enough? Are we delivering for the customers that we've got? How do we improve that? It's just a general business,
right.
cheaper, better, faster, if you like, in old terms. We're not allowed to say that sort of stuff anymore because it makes it sound like the quality's not important, which clearly it is. But yeah.
No, okay, okay, and you're right. I mean, we have had a lot of turbulence recently, but it hopefully is kind of stabilizing a bit. But you're right, issues like geopolitical issues and so on and so forth are kind of interesting, and we've got to keep an eye on it, especially for things like supply chain. You mentioned about Chinese supply, etc. So I guess it's always an eye to what's happening that might affect supply chains, those kind of things.
Sure. Yeah, no. So one of the things for us when Donald Trump came in is he put imports into the US from China, import tariffs. So they were 15% and they went to 7.5%, and he's threatening 60% if he gets into office again. So you just start to think about, well, what could you do differently in order
Sure.
um, to sort of move the needle back the other way if those sort of things do come in. So yeah, and you've got time to think about it because he's been saying it for a while now. So you have time to think about it, you have time to plan for it, and work out what you might do if that did happen.
No, okay. No, absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's always about thinking ahead in terms of what options could be. So, okay, and so one kind of final question, Mike, and again, thanks for your time. And that is what about inspiration for you? Where have you got inspiration from through all this kind of journey that you've been on? And have you got recommendations in terms of books or podcasts or those kind of things?
Yeah, so in terms of where inspiration came from, I think I'm just a competitive person. So in my younger days, I used to do a lot of canoe slalom, and that teaches the discipline of competing at a reasonably high level and the training that's involved with that, um,
Um,
and making
sorry.
sure that you are planning for the next 3 months of competition, not just for the next competition. So all of that stuff, I think, probably bred in me something which is just I just want to win at whatever I do. So I want to
Sure.
do better every day than I did yesterday. Never quite satisfied with last month's result. Always want to do better this month. So I guess that came from being introduced to a sport, being coached in that sport, having a teacher who took me under his wing and helped me with that at school. So that's where sort of that competitive nature comes from.
Sure.
Business. My dad was in business. Got some great advice from him when I was just finishing uni, which is go get some production experience, son. Which I went and got some production experience, like I was told, and again that taught me all the process stuff and how to do that.
Sure.
And then I made a promise to myself when I finished my degree, I'd never sit another exam ever again, and I haven't, except for my pilot's license, actually, but which was my one exception. So from that point of view, I made myself that promise, but that doesn't mean I can't keep myself educated. So if I was to listen to any podcast, go back to the early free economics podcast. They're really,
Right.
really good at giving you a
Yeah.
perspective on the world and how the world operates.
Yeah.
So that's good stuff. Just I love listening to statistics podcasts. So more or less, BBC podcast fantastic because it's just interesting stuff about the world. And
Sure.
reading economics articles. I'm a Times reader, so I read the economics articles in the Times, and you
Right.
just learn something as you go every day about how that all works and trying to stitch together how it might affect you, and just a general overall curiosity about the world, I guess.
Sure.
Like
I
keeping
love
yourself
that.
informed and up to date.
Absolutely. And I love that. I think keeping curious and never stop learning is just one of the greatest things we can do because, again, because the world changes around us so much, so that actually we do need to keep on top of what's happening. So yeah, I love that. Keep curious and keep learning. No, that's great. And interesting you go back to your dad. I've done a few of these, and actually that's a really kind of common theme in terms of parents influencing people and giving that one kind of bit of advice that really can be useful for the rest of your life. So
Yeah, I think
excellent.
all our parents influencers, right? It's just a question of how good or how badly they do it, right? Yeah,
Exactly. And that we hope that we do the same for our kids. And I guess
we try. You
we
you hope, don't you? Yeah.
we'll find out in time. But yeah. Mike, thanks so much indeed. Really enjoyed the conversation. Again, congratulations on the business and making the growth that you've got and the awards that you've won, so on and so forth. And keep on doing it. But really excellent. So yeah, good to talk with you. Thanks very much indeed.
Right.
Thank you, Mike. Thank
No,
you.
thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Appreciate
No
it, Roger. Thank you.
problem. No problem.